So as we talk about Toronto's strategy for the vaccination plan, plus getting businesses back on their feet, we talked to the one and only Mayor John Tory for his weekly check-in. Good morning to you, Mayor.
Hi, Mel.
All right, so let's start with Toronto Congress Centre. So this is significant. The numbers are looking really good. The teams, the volunteers, the staff, logistically, it's going very well in that there is accessibility for people to be able to get the shots. But the Toronto Congress Centre, how big is this going to be able to have a facility of this nature to be able to do walk-ins?
Well, we're going to find out because, where we are at the moment is in a good place in terms of what we've achieved, where we've got close to 80% of the people in the city of Toronto that are eligible with a first dose and over 50% with a second dose. But you can see the gap that exists there between people who have had one dose but not two. And so we have to continue to drive that number up. And we have some 20,000 plus, I think about 25,000 appointments available in city clinics across the city this week for the remainder of this week. So what's happened now is we don't have a supply problem anymore with the vaccine. So people can, for example, take an appointment they might have had made off into August for their second dose and move it up if they want to. So we thought we would try at this particular clinic in the Congress Centre out by the airport, having some walk-in availability, so there's not an appointment. You don't have to have one, and see how it worked out. And we're going to do it for the rest of this week between 12 and 7 and see how it's taken up, and then we'll take it from there.
Would the city consider doing something like what Peel Region has been doing like overnight clinics, something of a strategy that way, people who just can't seem to get to it at certain hours?
Well, we've been prepared from the beginning to say we do anything. And in fact, a lot of the pop-up clinics operated by our health partners have had very flexible hours to account for people's different work shifts and so on. And some of the clinics we're going to adopt this weekend for a big push we're going to do in the Etobicoke-Rexdale area are clinics that will operate at hours that are suited to the people's shifts that are going to be in the buildings where they live. So we're prepared to be very flexible on that. The key is to make sure that you don't just say you're doing, say, night hours for the sake of saying you're doing it, but rather that it makes sense, because we're deploying precious resources in order to give these vaccinations. So if it makes sense for us to do like what we're doing now, 12 to 7, 2,000 appointments available for walk-up at the Congress Centre, we'll do it. And the pop-up clinics are doing lots of flexible hours. And so we're just doing anything we can to make sure we get people to be able to find it easy to come and have a first or a second dose, because we've got to keep pushing those vaccine numbers up if we want to get the city reopened on a timely basis.
Let's talk about the reopening. A big push from the GTHA mayors, obviously, including yourself, to say to the province, now what? What is step 3 going to look like? We need to let our businesses know. Tourism's a big one here. So where do things stand? Are the conversations happening behind closed doors right now with the province in a potential announcement coming out any time now?
Well, there's two things we're talking about in that question. One is the guidelines that we need. So when stage 3 comes, and it's currently scheduled to come just after the 20th of July, we need to have guidelines for venues, for example, for music or that kind of thing. How many people will be allowed in? It's clear that they're going to be open, but it's not clear because the province has not come out with guidelines how many people would be able to go to a music concert or a theater performance. So we really need those guidelines, and they were needed before now so that some of these organizations could plan. The second question, that's the sort of broader one, is, well, will that happen? Stage 3, step 3, I think it's called, in the provincial reopening plans. Will the province decide to move early on that? The mayors have kind of said, look, if the numbers permit and it can be done safely, of course, we'd be prepared to consider some earlier start to some of those indoor activities, including indoor dining. But I think, most of us, with maybe very limited exceptions, would say that should be done safely and cautiously, and that if it means taking the time until the currently scheduled date, then, that's what's provided for in the plan. But if it can be moved up, then obviously we're favorably disposed to that if it can be safely done.
With all of that, I just want to get the question in, and I think I know the answer to it because you're waiting on the feds. But TFC, Jays, a lot of sports fans here in the city are looking for answers on whether or not they can attend in person. Do you have an update on a potential timeline from the feds at all?
No, not really. Although I think they're very aware of the fact that the TFC would like to start playing their games in Toronto at the end of the month. And the Jays, similarly, I think, have a 10-game homestand they could have in the Rogers Centre. That is a different question than spectators. The first question is, can the teams play here in Toronto, because it involves border considerations, because, of course, all the teams they play pretty much in those two leagues, especially baseball, come from the U.S. and so have to come back and forth, as the Jays would have to travel back and forth. The question of spectators is a bit different, but I know that there are very active discussions underway about who might constitute an initial crowd at the first TFC game, because I think it's the first one of those two teams that comes up at a home game towards the end of the month. And so it's certainly contemplated there will be some spectators. And again, what we're waiting on is how many. And that's a provincial decision. The border stuff is a federal decision.
Okay, so we will wait on all of that. Mayor John Tory, as always, appreciate your time. I'm going to let you reunite with Dina and Sid. I know you had a good time yesterday, so here they are.